60,000 wishlist in just 6 weeks. That's what my guest today, Jason, was able to accomplish with his upcoming game, Uncanny Valley. Now, he told me all about what he believes is the new marketing meta and how he got all of those wishlists without even really having a prototype for the game. So there's some neat tricks with animation and design, and he believes this is the way of the future for indie devs. Now, additionally, we talked about how he actually, on a different game, got both Markiplier and Jacksepticeye to play it, so that was really interesting, and all about how he and his girlfriend have created this two-person studio and how they're going to launch Uncanny Valley soon. It's a great conversation. He has tons of experience in the industry, and I'm really excited to share. Here we go. How did you get 60,000 wishlist in just 6 weeks?
Yeah, I think. Well, the easy way to sum it up is, I think short form is kind of the meta right now. Doing a combination of like your own short form, but also leveraging UGC. I think that's kind of the new meta that no one's really, at least like in the YouTube indie sphere, I think there's not a lot of like conversation about. So I think that's kind of what motivated me to like want to do this talk, is like talk about the new meta. I really think there's a new meta. It's a little bit maybe kind of cringe to say, but there's a really good way to ramp up wishlist fast. And it's kind of, I did a kind of a combination of what Chris Zukowski recommended for like, doing like a social media hell month before even like making a prototype of the game, and making like a trailer that is somewhat of a video prototype. So instead of like jumping into game dev, I kind of prototyped the concept and like did like some visual prototyping to see what resonates. Made a trailer, did the whole like IGN announce beat, and paired that with some UGC outreach. So reaching out to influencers to make like short form content. But honestly, the biggest, highest impact thing was just the announce beat with IGN, doing the kind of standard formula of like building up some short form content to try to get some like 1 million views on my own videos, just by like on my own YouTube channel. And then using that as like a way to barter up to an IGN featuring. And then that IGN featuring kind of like networked out into like a bunch of other people picking up the game. So this like announce beat, even though like the YouTube video on IGN only got like, I don't know, I forget, it was like 15,000 views, something very low. Other syndicates kind of picked it up and then shared it via short form. And that went super viral and got like millions of views on Instagram and TikTok and stuff. So I think there's a lot to be said about this kind of new short form meta, not just with that beat, that's like one part of it, but also like this other half that a lot of publishers are doing now, which is like kind of, having this network of influencers and having them make short form content, either paid or unpaid. But I think unpaid's still like much more viable than just paying influencers. I mean, you can do a combination of both. But yeah, I think there's a big unspoken of meta that even Chris Zukowski hasn't really featured or talked about yet, that I think is going to be kind of up and coming, and people are going to start hearing a lot more about it.
Okay, yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this because, like you said, it's a little bit like I've seen maybe kind of whispers about it. I remember just one conversation on Jonas Tyroller's podcast where someone used shorts as a strategy. But overall, yeah, the short form content has not made its way into the game dev sort of zeitgeist. So you've had a lot of success with it. So I want to spend a lot of time talking about it. Why don't we start?
Sure.
Take me back to this idea, like beginning. You even told me that you think there's this new version of prototyping where you don't even really build the game. You just build animations and a trailer. So kind of take me back early stage with Uncanny Valley, and also maybe for the audience, give us just, the elevator pitch for Uncanny Valley. I'll throw it on the screen so people can see it. But yeah, take me back to the earliest phase of this for you and kind of that testing phase, what it looked like and what you were looking to accomplish.
Yeah, well, it started off as a totally different game, actually. We had like this way, I think actually, in retrospect, it was actually a better idea. But we kind of pivoted it because maybe it was a bit too controversial. We didn't know how far we could go with Steam. Kind of we were kind of like being a little bit safe. But the original idea was kind of like a good cop, bad cop simulator. So we were trying to do like somewhat of a friend swap, but you play as like two cops and you're interrogating somebody, and you get to like use all these different means to try to get them to break. And I think it was a cooler concept, and I actually maybe will revisit it if nobody steals it after watching this podcast. But it was a really kind of like a multiplayer interrogation sim. we kind of pivoted that because we saw some stuff about like Steam not like allowing torture games, even though we realized afterwards that it's actually fine because Steam like lets anything on actually. But so I kind of was catching wind of this like idea of using trailer to kind of pitch my game to the audience before actually making the game, because we all know that making a game takes way more time than making animations, making videos. And I was seeing all these games. I saw like Hellmart did like their animated trailer. I was like, this is only animation. And it got like 100,000 wish lists. And like, I saw a bunch of other games just using only animation to kind of create this visual prototype. And then I was also getting into like watching a lot of videos about making trailers, and how making the trailer itself is a huge exercise in figuring out like what your game is, how it's going to play, what's the flow, what's the aesthetic. And so I just jumped into like, all right, let's just make a trailer. Like, let's make a trailer that shows from start to finish what this game could look like. And we got inspired by, like, I live in Georgia, the country. And it's, my girlfriend's Georgian. And we were both like, let's make a game about Georgian, like, kind of like a Papers, Please type sim. We kind of pivoted from the good cop, bad cop to being like, let's just make it a checkpoint simulator. Quarantine Zone came out. It was working really, really well. And it just felt like a safe thing. I kind of like still kind of battle myself internally because I like want to be more innovative, more experimental. So we're trying to imbue that a little bit instead of just being like a Quarantine Zone or Paper Please clone. But yeah, it started off as being like kind of a Quarantine Zone clone, I guess, which anyone could see if they look at the game. They're like, it's just Quarantine Zone. But I mean, we're small, we're indie. We just wanted to try something as our first game and to like do stuff with some mechanics that are working really well. And we figured even if you make a clone, it kind of like has its own DNA and its own kind of like artistic feel. So kind of pairing that with Georgia, and we're like, let's do it Soviet Georgia. Let's kind of go all in because there's not like a game about Georgia, about Georgian people. The people are very interesting and have very quirky personalities. Culture is very weird and like a lot of weird folklore. So aesthetic, there's so much to draw from. So yeah, we're kind of doing like a Quarantine Zone, but like mutation based. So like radioactive, kind of Fallout, kind of Metro vibe. That's kind of in a nutshell.
So you pivoted from this good cop, bad cop idea, and then was Uncanny Valley the first kind of trailer prototype, let's call it, that you did, and then you saw what you wanted to see, so you moved forward?
Yeah, pretty much. It was our first one in Steam. I should say, like, I have a huge history in mobile, which we can maybe talk about a little bit, but that's how, mobile games are kind of like tested early on. Even they're not actually pure CPI. They did this like CPI video thing, which is cost per install. So they would make a video of like the game and then they'd do ads and see what the turnaround is, like the cost per install. And that's how they would figure out which games would be able to be scaled up easily and cheaply and then make money easily. That totally died out. So that's like an old, now ancient history in the mobile game sphere. But that was like during the hyper casual and hybrid casual time period, which was a very interesting time period for games. It was like not 2019, 2020. Yeah. So I kind of like took some DNA from that and tried it with Steam a little bit. So yeah, it was our first one for the studio.
Yeah, very cool. I even had this itch in the back of my head of like, it feels like those mobile games where you see this ad that like doesn't really exactly line up. So it's making sense that DNA is getting pulled in here. One thing that I was curious about your instinct here in this kind of new meta marketing beat, I feel like I don't play these checkpoint simulators, as you called them. I was actually going to ask you what you called the genre because I've seen these games, but as I was reflecting on it, I think I've only seen them through short form content. So I was wondering if you feel like there are maybe certain genres that have sort of been adopted by short form content, or if you think most Steam genres would be a good fit for this kind of strategy.
I really believe most Steam genres could work. Like, I think it's really, short form content is kind of like its own art form. So you have to find like, what's the hook? You have to find what's the like, what's the meat that's going to engage people. So it's all about optimizing the data, like the analytics on YouTube or TikTok or whatever you're testing these videos on. But I think anything can work if you frame it and kind of present it right. I do think that the checkpoint thing works really well because there's a lot of like faces. People like to see faces just like any kind of YouTube bait. It's like you want to see like some kind of hook, something eye catching. But I honestly, I don't even think my game is particularly good at this, actually. I think the only thing that I did good was making good videos, but the game itself, like, I really don't think it's special, like inherently special. It's like I said, it's kind of like a somewhat inspired by Papers, Please and Quarantine Zone. And I got a lot of hate on like the videos because it's just a Papers, Please slop or clone of this game. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's got a lot of inspiration from that, but we're trying to do our own thing with it. But yeah, I don't think it's particularly, I think any genre can do it. So it really comes down to how you do it. And there's tricks to it.
If you've ever thought to yourself, man, I have a question about game dev. If only I could ask someone who's been there and done that before, well, I have the perfect opportunity for you. Tomorrow, June 23rd at 3 p.m. Eastern, I'm hosting a Q&A with Aramis, meaning you get to ask the questions and he will give the answers. And the way you get access to this is by joining my Discord. That part's free, but the event itself is a ticketed event. So you have to join at the Dreamer tier in the Discord. It's $15 a month, and that gets you access to a monthly event like this with an hour of time with a successful game dev. This might be a presentation, it might be a Q&A, something like that. But this one tomorrow with Aramis is an hour of questions and answers. So if you are looking to connect with a great dev, this is a great opportunity. Like I said, if you're watching this in the future, we've got a monthly guest, and so you can come and join the Discord for free to see who that guest is. All right, thanks. Let's get you back to the episode. Okay, perfect. And I do have several questions kind of getting into the nitty gritty of making good videos and kind of what that looks like. But let's just stay kind of high level for just a few more questions here. Now, you mentioned early on this idea of UGC, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's user generated content. So like getting people
Yeah.
to post their own content about your game. So was that a part of your plan with Uncanny Valley, that this would be a game that works well for UGC, or was it kind of just like, that's a bonus, if it happens, it happens?
I never even thought about UGC for up until the IGN announce beat. I was just thinking about the IGN announce beat. I made the whole trailer. Just following the Chris Zukowski masterclass, basically doing like a social media hell month followed by the first announce beat and hoping that it gets a big wish list bump. And I was just trying to do my own short form videos, but I saw my now publisher Polden on LinkedIn. So they're like huge, like becoming titans all of a sudden with this whole format of testing with different services like Jester. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's becoming really big, which is basically this like, it's like this syndicate that has a bunch of influencers that are ready to do short form video, and they pay people to do like a boost, like a little test. And this is like completely separate from what my plan was and what was already working for me, actually. So I want to like kind of separate the two and mentally, because some people will look at my success and just think it's just the publisher. It just happened at the same time, so it's hard to parse the data, but I can look at like where I got wish lists from, and I could see that the majority of them are actually from the IGN announce beat and just like the network effect of that. And then I got a good chunk of them also from this UGC Jester, uh, you know, uh, syndicate, which is really great. It's super useful. I think it's, if you have money to spend, which I know a lot of indies don't, so I wouldn't like, say go for it. You can spend some money and do some testing and get some wish lists that way. But I think most people are consuming short form content, and these UGC, like having other people make videos of your game, it can really convert really, really well. It's like insanely good, like beyond whatever the meta is with Chris Zukowski stuff. I've seen way bigger growth from like Reels and TikTok. And yeah, I think there's a trick to getting other people to play it organically, or like show videos about it organically. Like if you have a viral concept, and if you're optimizing your concept in the first place, like I want to make a concept that could go viral on these social media platforms, and like designing your game based on that, you can get a lot of organic reach that way. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but ultimately short form and having either you or other people is really like the heavy hitter right now.
Yep. Okay, a couple things to say because I'm hearing the skeptic in the audience of, short form just doesn't convert, I think is like the first thing that comes to my mind. And so, one thing just to let the audience know, you have released another Steam game in the past. Like you said, you have a history in mobile games. So, you do have some experience. This isn't your first go around. But also, can you give people an idea? We kind of dropped right at the beginning 60,000 wish list in 6 weeks. But can you kind of just talk a little bit about some of the validation of the numbers that you've seen with Uncanny Valley as compared to what you've seen in the past?
Oh, I mean, when I first started Steam, like 10, 15 years ago or whatever, I had no idea what I was doing at all. That's why I kind of ended up leaving making indie games and moving to mobile because I had no idea. I was just making games. I got lucky with them getting like kind of viral, but I made like no money from it. And I got to the age where I needed a job. And yeah, I think I just, gained some experience doing the mobile thing. And then I came back and I've been just watching Steam, wanting to do Steam for so long, making games on the side for my day job, and then they're not going anywhere. So I was like, all right, I need to validate whatever I'm going to work on because, if I'm going to quit my job, I need to make sure that I can get some kind of security, whether it's through wish lists or a publisher deal or whatever. I need to know that I'm going to move on to something that's going to work. And so, yeah. Does that answer the question?
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, and then also, can you just talk wish list numbers so people can get an idea of how successful is this working for you, if you're willing?
Yeah, I mean, my old game, the one from 10 years ago, I didn't even know what wish lists were. That's how stupid I was with it. So nowadays, it's a totally different story. And that was pre-Chris Zukowski explaining things too. But I mean, now the wish list numbers are just crazy. I don't know. I got like 60K. I have 70K now. I haven't really done anything since that announcement beat. I've just been working on the game. So, yeah, I think that I couldn't compare the two. I think people were getting pretty good wish lists back then as well. I just had no idea how to do it. But now it's totally different. I think there's much more proven ways, specifically with great Chris Z and like this new short form content approach, which I think is going to become more prominent if it's not already.
Yeah, and for people that are like super tapped into Steam meta, they just made some announcements that popular and upcoming is going to change. And so
Yeah.
there's some theories. I mean, I think we have to wait and see the data, but there's some theories that getting 7K wish list, which has been the strategy for almost a decade, I think, might not
Hmm.
work anymore. And so this potentially might become the new meta if it opens you up to the possibility of 60K, 100K wish
Yeah.
list, and you really just maybe there's a world where you kind of have to almost aim for virality, whereas these past couple years you could just settle for like a good game and with 7K wish list. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting time to talk about this. People are potentially going to be looking for ways to increase their chances of like a massive success.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that all lands. Now, just to get specific here to help people with this idea of short strategy, I for sure saw that you posted on Shorts and TikTok, but it looked like maybe Shorts or YouTube Shorts in particular were more successful. Any other places you posted? Where would you recommend people go to post? What kind of platforms did worked for you?
Yeah. So this is super interesting because I feel like my opinions on it are kind of changing daily right now. But like, YouTube is a really good place to get started and get like high amounts of views, but the conversion is not as good as Instagram or TikTok. And actually, surprisingly,
Interesting.
the highest conversion is probably the one you'd least expect is Instagram. Instagram Reels, like
Really?
I've learned from
Okay.
my publisher, the highest converting view per wish list is actually Instagram and Facebook, which is like so old school and like
Wow.
it's super weird. And it's not Twitter, it's not TikTok, it's not YouTube, but it's Instagram Reels. Which is weird because it's like probably the one that we associate with short form content the least, but it's actually I don't know if it's just the audience is more tuned in, more Steam friendly. I have no idea. I thought it would be YouTube, but I guess YouTube actually is more of a casual audience when you get
Hmm.
higher numbers. When you get the higher millions of views on YouTube, the audience is more generic versus when you go to like TikTok or Instagram, it's actually more targeted, which is weird.
Interesting.
It's very weird, but it's actually harder to go viral on Instagram and TikTok. So it's harder, but if you can crack it, you can do way better. It's very weird.
Yeah,
It's
that's
very interesting.
fascinating. And whenever you post one of these shorts, are you optimizing and changing anything for each platform, or is it just I make the same and the same short gets posted to all 5 platforms or wherever you're posting?
Yeah, I mean, I was just doing, I was focusing on YouTube. I wasn't even thinking about Instagram and TikTok. They were just like an afterthought that I was putting it on. And I was focusing on YouTube because I really love their analytics dashboard. Like it's so clear. You can see they have like everything really set up so that you can be like, oh, I can see what went wrong with this video. I need to fix the first 3 seconds because they have like one like swipe ratio, which is like, swipe to skip ratio. And that's a very, very clear metric. And Reels and TikTok, they have their own dashboards and analytics stuff, but I'm just not as familiar. Maybe it gets pretty granular. I've seen some of the dashboards, I played with it, but I just focused so much on YouTube, and it worked pretty well. But I think even the stuff that I've made was not the most optimal stuff. I probably could have done different types of videos that could have gone more viral. Like I really think genuinely, even though our game's cool and I'm really trying to make it awesome, like after the fact, it's actually not an inherently viral game. Like it's not like one of those games where you see a few seconds of gameplay and you're like, wow. Because the game's kind of slow. It's paperwork, and then there's some mutants eventually and occasionally, but it's more about like slow dread. And that doesn't really make for a good TikTok. Other types of games can be more engaging, stuff that's more in your face or with a better aesthetic. Uh, and where you can actually see the gameplay. I think gameplay converts better. And even stuff like dev talking about, I added this and I changed this from this to this, these kind of things, and showing the before and afters, those convert better than what I was doing, which is like I was making like animated skits, which is kind of like it worked for getting viral. And so that kind of made it so that I had a lot of views, but the conversion was low versus like if you made something that went viral, but it was very clearly, this is a game, I'm the developer, it's a cool concept like that. And it actually, the audience understands that, they'll actually convert better to Steam. So I think as far as what I'm doing, it's the lowest optimal. It still works. It's great. I'm very like, it worked really well. But it's not inherently a viral thing. I think that you could do a lot better um, with different approaches.
Very nice. Can you take me a little bit into your workflow of creating a short? Like, do you have any type of formula? Do you focus really hard on like those first 3 seconds? Kind of tell me about what you're doing when you're crafting one of these shorts.
Yeah. So what makes a good short in general is like 3 things. I think one is the opener or the hook. So the first 3 seconds, clearly defining, setting the scene, and getting people's attention. You're like, there's tons of like YouTube videos explaining how to make a captivating first 3 seconds. I think indie devs should learn this because they're really cool. And so my hook that I found after trying a bunch of different ones, like first I had no traction and I was just making a bunch of videos, trying random stuff that sounded cool off the top of my head. And then I came up with one which is like basically this is a psychological test in this game because it's a Papers, Please where you kind of like determine if you quarantine or kill these people. So you need to like, I wanted to make it like, this is a psychological test. Your decisions here, they impact you personally. And like, they define your personality profile. And I watched like some shorts, like explainer tutorial. And they said that basically if you can relate it to the viewer and really like make it like about them, it just goes way viral. And it really did. It went way better than when I was just like, I'm making a game about me, my game, like really like talking about what I care about. I switched it around, just like try to focus on the viewer, and that worked really well. I got this idea from the guy that made Sensory Overload. So he's kind of like, he wrote some blogs about making good shorts for indie games, and he got like 70,000 wish lists in like just a few months or whatever from his game, and it was just through short form, nothing else, his own short form, no UGC or anything, and so I recommend checking out his like article about it. It's really, really good. But that's where I got the idea for the psychological test. So you get like a hook, kind of try to make it about the viewer, or at least make it super engaging in some way. And then you want to like keep it really quick and snappy through the next like 30 seconds, which is like the meat, and you want to like constantly take them through a very linear ride. It's something that engages them. Like for my videos, like the one that worked was basically, this is a psychological test, and then there's 3 characters, all with their own weird, unique twists or unique character profile, and you have to quickly decide to pass, quarantine, or kill. And so that's the format that really worked for my game. And then at the end, there's some kind of twist. So hook, engagement bait, meat, which is like asking a series of questions but not revealing the answer till the end. And then at the end, you reveal the answer, but you kind of don't, and you kind of tease them, or you put like a twist. And that's pretty much every time I do that now for my videos, they go viral. And it's very simple. So it really is like about testing different stuff and seeing what works, and finding the good hooks, and then finding like, okay, the hook worked, like the swipe ratio is good on this video, but the engagement's bad. So just like hyper analyzing, like, what can I make? How can I make this more engaging? Maybe I need to make it faster paced, because if it's too slow, people swipe away, and you're pretty much just trying to keep them from swiping away. And if you do stuff like not reveal the answer until the end, people get really engaged, So there's all these different ways and tricks to doing it. But yeah, at the end, adding some kind of twist or something that kind of reframes the video so they watch it again. That's huge for the analytics. If they watch it, if they debate about it, like a big thing for YouTube specifically is comments. Like if you can get a lot of comments, it goes viral automatically. And stuff where it talks about the user, usually they'll post like, these are my results. I passed and then quarantined and then killed. And that, therefore, my personality type is ambiguous. It doesn't say it in the video what my personality type is. Oh, or I must be a sociopath because I killed everybody, or whatever. So yeah, I think experimentation, but like really like dialing in. The analytics tell you exactly what's wrong with your videos. So if you follow these, you can just optimize more and more until you get to a golden format, and then you just double down on that format and just keep making more videos of that same one.
Yeah, this is really fun to nerd out about a little bit. And like you said, there's tons of really good info on making good short form content. I actually had a short form content unrelated to game dev before this podcast, so I've gone down the rabbit hole before. One thing I've noticed also you mentioned here was this idea of finding a format. One of the successful short form devs that I've found is his name's Inbound Shovel, and he just starts all of his top successful videos. They all start with, he just says, a game dev secret about. And so he just continues to do that. And, I think we think of on YouTube, you need to be like, every idea needs to be really original because we're thinking about long form and we need to like share all these ideas. But short form almost seems like exactly the opposite. Like you can literally just find one thing and you just keep going with that one thing. Is that kind of what you've seen in some of your research with other games? And it sounds like maybe that's what worked for you as well.
Yeah, I think it totally works. I personally, I've kind of like fell off because I haven't made any videos lately because I've just been like busy working on the game. But when I go back to it, I'll go back to milking this format as much as possible. I probably start now that we're getting close to the demo, dedicating more time to it. But yeah, I think finding a format and then milking it until it doesn't yield any wish list anymore or any views. But I don't think it does. I think the real problem actually is that we get bored. Like I personally am like, I know this works, but I don't really want to make these videos. I want to make like more, try different hooks out, try different concepts. I want to talk about my game design. I don't want to like just pander to what people, what people respond to. I want to share like the game development, but that's like almost risky in the sense that you're going to spend all this time working on the short that no one's going to really respond to. So it is kind of like, yeah, it kind of sucks. You kind of get trapped in your own success in a weird way. But I think it's worth doubling down, but maybe mixing in some experiments or some, for you, if you have time and energy. I mean, the bottom line is that the beauty of shorts is that we can do it alongside development. It doesn't take too long. The videos I did were kind of taking too long because they were fully animated skits. So that's like why I say that my game's not inherently viral. I had to make custom videos specifically to go viral, which is one approach if your game's not naturally like there yet, but I do think that you could just make your own videos straight from gameplay, and they could go viral if it's cool enough. And that's more ideal. But yeah, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked a little
Yeah.
bit.
No, you're totally fine. Yeah, to give people an idea of how much work goes into a good short, how much time were you spending on those animated ones? And then how much time do you think, in the ideal world where the second part that you're saying, a game dev that has a more fleshed out game that's a little more friendly, how long should a
Mhm.
good short take an average dev, do you think?
Yeah, I was taking like a whole day to work on one short, and it was a full work day. A lot of work and a lot of scripting and just mostly a lot of animation work. I think a couple hours would be ideal. I think you could record a cool snippet that's already in your game that doesn't require too much, finagling and changing the visuals too much. Um, and you could record a really good script. So like what Sensory Overload guy does is amazing. Like his stuff, his game is like a falling game where it's just spirals of like crazy, like epileptic seizure type, like it's called sensory overload because it's really designed to make you feel overwhelmed visually, which is really cool, visually and audio. Um, and it's just raw gameplay as far as I can tell. And it's just him talking about stuff like ADHD or like stuff that's more personal to the viewer. Um, so I think that if you can have like just a really engaging gameplay segment and then just like record that and put a really good engaging script over it where it's just your voice over while things are happening and make it like 30 to 40 seconds, that could go viral for sure. That's ideal. I just didn't have any game developed yet. That's why I did the animation approach. You're frozen, by the way, on my end. I don't know if that's for you or if it's just
Yeah,
on my end.
should be all good. Yeah, the way the software works, it uploads the local data, so whatever we see isn't what comes out on the other end. So
Okay, cool.
hopefully
Cool.
it should solve it in the edit. So
Cool.
okay, yeah, very cool. I will. Now you're frozen. That's funny. I'll cut this part out. Um,
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, thanks for sharing some of those specifics. Really curious to hear from people if they've seen similar success. I'd love to kind of step back out again, wrapping up here with this short segment. So you mentioned at the top of the episode that you did a Hell Month to lead up to this, to getting featured by IGN. Can you tell me
Yeah.
about your strategy for that month? And then, yeah, how'd you get covered by IGN?
Yeah, so my Hell Month was I had already done like, we spent 2 months probably before that, just kind of, pivoting from that original game concept and then switching to this new concept. And then I was like, I don't want to just develop the whole thing. I want to like visualize it. So I'm going to work on a trailer. And so I was working on the trailer while also working on these short form videos while I still had a full-time job. So I had my full-time job and on the side, I was just making short form videos. I'm like, I don't have time to work on gameplay. So I'm just going to make a short form video per day. And we did that for the whole month, which is what Chris Zukowski recommends, basically to test whether your game has legs in social media marketing. Because his general advice is like, don't focus on social media. It doesn't work, which I kind of disagree with now after trying that, because I did what he recommended, like kind of the standard making TikTok short form content advice, and it didn't work at first. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna engineer the video specifically to go viral, which is actually like against his recommendation. He's like, don't be cute, don't try to make highly memes. He said memes, but I think what he really meant was like, don't try to engineer for virality. Try to do your best to keep it clean and simple, and see if people respond to it as like for like kind of a signal to see if social media should be something you focus on. Um, but we did a month and I was like, it's not working, but I want to make it work because I'm enjoying making shorts. So I'm going to actually take a YouTube Shorts course. I took one, the one by John Scott. It was pretty good, pretty snappy. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to make animated videos that like are catchy and try to see if that works. And it worked. It worked after like probably around a month. So after a month, we started hitting and they started being viral. And that was exactly the time that IGN, I was like, okay, we finished the trailer as well. So I wanted to pitch it to IGN. So it was like going viral as IGN just when I reached out to them. We did way better actually after the whole IGN thing even before IGN posted it, it was just like after I had reached out to them, I only had 1 million views. That was like my minimum bar. But after that, I got like 20 million just without adding new videos. Just the same videos are still there. Um, yeah. And then we reached out to IGN, did the whole like announcement beat thing, and it did really well. And that's kind of what created all the wish lists.
Okay, yeah, super impressive. Thanks for sharing all of that about shorts and short strategy. I would love to also spend some time talking game dev as well. If we could start with Uncanny Valley. So you've mentioned, you've kind of shifted from this intense marketing season to a time of development so that you can get the game working. I'm
Yeah.
curious, with these checkpoint simulators, what have you found that makes a good checkpoint simulator?
Yeah, that's a good question. I honestly like I feel the same way as you do. I'm not like huge on checkpoint sims. I like Quarantine Zone for like an hour, and then I was like, okay, it's pretty repetitive after that. But I loved No, I'm Not a Human. So this actually No, I'm Not a Human was actually the main inspiration. Now that I think about it, we were like playing No, I'm Not a Human, and we just wanted to make a multiplayer co-op version of No, I'm Not a Human. And I think what made that game so interesting was actually the variety of characters and like the variety of like random special events instead of just becoming this routine, which is fun too. Like people like the routine, the job simulation aspect, but the actual like thing that really hooks people is unique characters, like unique situations thrown in to actually disrupt the routine and making it more like a story. So having some kind of story around it as opposed to just being this job simulator, which I think job simulators do really well. But personally, what I find really exciting is like seeing where it goes. Like what's this all leading to? Um, so yeah, having this decision, also the decision making side is really important on these games. Like having consequences. If you make a wrong decision because you just missed one tiny little detail, it should come to bite you in the ass later. It shouldn't be just something that you just move on from really quickly and like there's no big deal. Like, oh, I messed up, no big deal. The guy died, no problem. Uh, I think what makes it much more interesting is if like you kill the wrong person, that has some kind of chain reaction. And so we designed this game to be much more like this is kind of like our differentiator, I guess. Like it's a co-op game, which is one differentiator, but the other differentiator is that like all your choices are networked together. Like it's a kind of a small town, and there's actually a limited pool of characters. Like it's not just randomly generated. A new character comes to the booth, and you just have to like kill him or whatever, and you never have to worry about it again. It's like every character is becoming more and more mutated over time, and so you're kind of like monitoring them. They come in, you see if they're like too far gone or if they need to be healed, so that they kind of take a couple steps back. And this creates this more like dynamic where the characters, their evolution of their mutations is specifically based on what your decisions in the past were. And then if they're too far gone, but you let them in, then they kill people in the town, and they actually come to your booth and attack you at certain points. So there's all this like this decision making, and seeing these like decisions play out, I think is really what makes a checkpoint sim more interesting than just like uh, generic stuff, generic checkpoint sims, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly interesting, and also it sounds like a lot to manage on the development side with all these sort of branching storylines. So how
Yeah.
are you trying to build it on like a sort of systems level where it sort of does the work for you, or are these almost like handcrafted like things that are happening on the back end? How are you handling that?
It's a hybrid. So it's got like unique story events that kind of push the main narrative forward, and these also like can happen in conjunction with you making a decision for a character that's at the booth. So that can influence your decision negatively in that specific moment. If someone's attacking you and you, because we actually have like, besides the checkpoint sim, we actually have kind of like a Lethal Company type gameplay as well, where it's like co-op, but you're getting attacked. And so there's this kind of a defense and attack element to it that can really distract you from making your good decisions. So yeah, having a combination of having like this systemic gameplay, but also throwing in these random story events, and also having the the story itself, like basically we have each character has their own narrative, you know, their own arc. And we also create this system where, you know, if you impact one certain character and like they're tied to another character, like if it's their mother or father and you killed them and then they come to the booth and they're like, you killed my father, then there's some kind of reaction about that. So there's this combination of having this systemic gameplay where they're mutating over time. You can heal them or whatever, or let them be and become more mutated. But if you make certain decisions, they are hooked into these certain other characters. So it's really character driven. The characters themselves are the self-contained systems, and they sometimes interconnect here and there. You're
Yeah, it
back, by
sounds
the way.
incredibly Okay, perfect. Yeah, it sounds incredibly interesting. I'm glad you can get a good beat on what I'm saying here. It sounds like a good way to make a checkpoint simulator a little more interesting and maybe even a little more accessible to a wider audience. I'm even like I'd probably try it. Like I'm not really a checkpoint sim guy, but
Cool.
everybody loves a good story and the branching stuff. So another thing that I found really interesting about your development is that you are a two-person studio. So
Yep.
Spiral Trap Studios, you're working with your girlfriend. Can you just tell me about kind of
Yep.
who's doing what, and just give us an idea of how you break out the work?
Yeah. So I'm the developer. You know, I do most stuff, like maybe 80% of the development stuff, and well, 80% of production in general. I do like a lot of the environments as well as the coding and everything, and networking, all the codey stuff. And she's really good at making characters. So right now she's really focused on all the characters and all the designs, and some art. And we're trying to get her to mostly kind of shift into the like art director role. You know, I'm okay with art, but I'm not like the best. That's always like my main weakness. So she's going to come in and do most of the art in the end. So we're trying to make her like into she's very new, but she's like really impressive. Like her aesthetic is so cool and so interesting, and so we're trying to like create like a really great art director out of her. And so over the course of the project, she's taking on more and more responsibility, and yeah, so basically dev artist split is the best way to describe it. And she's amazing, like so impressive for a newbie. You know, she's only been using Blender for like a year and a half, and it's just the characters are so cool, and that's actually what sold the trailer too, was her art. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I'll
art
second.
dev team is like the best. Art dev
Yeah,
split is
absolutely.
like is the ideal.
Yeah, I think that is the dream for a lot of people because it's such a separate skill set. I mean, there are a few rare people that are truly good at both, but typically, yeah, the combo together sounds amazing. And yeah, I agree. The character models are really impressive. Like there's one that they have like I think it's like a fungus stuck on their side of the head, like it's just stuck in
Oh
my
yeah,
brain with how cool it is. So yeah, props to her.
yeah.
How do you guys balance the kind of dynamic of sometimes being coworkers and sometimes being in a relationship together? Is that ever a hard thing?
We're getting deep here, man. That is a it is it can be touchy sometimes, you know, especially when like we're not in the you know like I have a lot of experience. I've been doing this for a long time, and she's very new. So I sometimes will be like the boss, which is not a good dynamic at all because, you know, we're supposed to be equal partners. And sometimes she's like doesn't want to hear it. Or like, if I'm like, hey, can you tweak this? And she's like, you know, I have this vision and I'm like, okay. So it really comes down to, I think like, you know, even though she's new, like letting her like cook, you know, and I think that letting each other cook and just trusting each other. Cause ultimately I do. She's like, everything she does surprises me. So I'm like, all right, just do your work, and we just do it together, and we hang out in the same room, and it's actually I think really optimal, you know, working together because not only are we in the same like studio room that we can talk about the game, but we have like daily play sessions. So this is like I think super critical for like two-player games or multiplayer games is having someone to play test with and bouncing ideas off very rapidly. I think the only drawback is that it's sometimes like we're talking about the game all the time, you know, and it becomes this all consuming thing where it's like, okay, we need to like take a step back and not actually like let's talk about other things. Let's go do something else. Let's distract ourselves and like get our minds off this and go see a movie or something. So
Yeah,
you
as
have to
someone
learn
who
boundaries, I guess.
Yeah, someone who worked with my now wife, for like the first like 6 years of our marriage, we worked at the same place, and it was a very small place, a very close knit. Yeah, it has that sense of like one, it's always awesome to have like such a tight bond because so much of your day has been doing the same thing. But there are times when it's tough and it can hard to be just in a relationship and not be coworkers. So yeah, just curious what you would say. Thanks for sharing that. Um,
Yeah, no problem. I think
al- also,
it's a great setup actually. I really do think because you're both locked in. You both are invested, and there's it makes you less likely to quit too because you're like letting down your partner. So it kind of makes you really committed to something. So there's a lot of benefits to it, I think.
yeah, absolutely. Well, all the best to you both on this game. Would love to dive into a little bit of your history. You've dropped a little bit about it, and there's a couple just really interesting things. First off, I'll say, can we talk about Flicks and Chill a little bit? And can you give people just first, just what is that game to start?
Yeah. Well, I think it's first worth noting how old I am. I'm like 34 now. So I've been in this industry for way too long, and I've actually I've seen it at different snapshots in time. Like the indie scene now is completely different than what it was 10 years ago when I released Flicks and Chill. It was, I think, 2016 actually when I released it. And I had like 5 years of like dabbling and failing at projects before that, which is kind of sad to say. But yeah, Flicks and Chill was like, I was like, all right, I'm fed up. I'm failing at making games. I'm going to make small games, which is hilarious how 10 years later, how relevant that still is. Like making small games is like the best way to go as an indie in general. And actually now it's like a AAA studio. It seems like everyone's shifting to small games, even AAA companies. But yeah, so I was making like this I was trying to make like a series like games that are just based on like things that happen in my life. And I was playing around with I was like, all right, let's make a game about Netflix and chill. This is like that was like a big meme at the time. I can't believe it's been like 10 years or whatever. And it was just like, I'm going to make a silly, stupid dating sim that's like, it was actually inspired by like Telltale games. Like I was a huge fan of like the Walking Dead and The Wolf Among Us. And I wanted to make like an animated visual novel because a lot of visual novels are like static. And I'm like, I want to make a choose your own adventure type game that's kind of like the dialogue branches out based on your decisions. Um, but I was just like pairing it with this concept of making it like the Netflix and chill meme and dating sim. And basically your choices, like what you say influences how they feel about you, which is kind of, I guess, similar to dating. I don't even know what dating's like anymore, to be honest. Too old. But yeah, I think, yeah, I was inspired by the Telltale games. And yeah, I was trying to make a series, but the first one popped off. So that's what happened. Like I put it on Newgrounds, actually. I used to make a lot of stuff on Newgrounds for fun, but it kind of went viral on Newgrounds, and it got like it was doing really well. It got played by Markiplier, like the first demo snippet, like it was just one level, and that was the whole game on Newgrounds, and it went viral. And yeah, it got played by a lot of YouTubers. Just that like one thing, and I'm like, okay, I got pitched by a publisher to make like a full game. I made a full game, which was basically just like 6 levels, like 6 different scenarios, and that was the game. And it got played by Jacksepticeye, Markiplier, all those classics, Cinnamon Toast Ken, and I was very happy. It didn't make me any money. I got like nothing because the publisher didn't know what they were doing, and we sold it for only 99 cents, and we didn't add any more content to it. It was really poorly managed from all of us because I didn't know what I was doing, and the publisher didn't know what they were doing, and yeah. I continued my game dev hustle and grind after that, but it was fun. It was really exciting. I got to go to like a bunch of conventions and like it's like cool talking point.
Yeah, I mean, the main reason I wanted to start with talking about that game was, yeah, some of those legendary YouTubers, Markiplier and Jacksepticeye. So that just happened kind of randomly. They just found it on Newgrounds because it was just sort of a different era of the internet kind of thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of small YouTubers picked it up first, and then big YouTubers picked it up later. So I think that that's still the way it works. You get like something that kind of bubbles up into its own small niche, and then if that's big enough, some small YouTubers pick it up because they're like, hey, this is cool. It's working well on that platform, like Newgrounds. Probably itch.io is the Newgrounds nowadays. Like it's probably, unfortunately for Newgrounds, I think itch.io is better for these short form, free experiences where you can kind of test something, maybe see if it goes viral. And then it goes, gets picked up by a bigger YouTuber and you maybe make a bigger game about it and put it on Steam. I think that's a very valid approach. That's kind of like in its own way a meta. But yeah, that was totally a different approach. No trailer, nothing there. It was just a game that popped off on its own.
Yeah, it's really coming full circle with you going viral with Uncanny Valley and kind of starting your early career, so to speak, with some virality on YouTube. So that's very cool. Now, you've also mentioned that you had a nice little stint doing mobile, and
Yeah.
you specifically told me about Kaiju Run, which had over 100 million downloads. So can you tell me a little bit more
Yeah, it
about
was
Kaiju
huge.
Run?
Yeah, so after kind of failing at indie dev for a while because I just could never finish a big project, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just focus on small projects. I'm just gonna make small games. And I just decided to get really serious about that. This was like 2019 or so. And at the same time, it was kind of the hyper casual wave was coming, which is basically like small games for mobile. I'm sure we've all played these small runner games, these really stupid like time wasters, but they were very, very profitable and like being pumped really hard during that time period because the cost per install, basically an add to install ratio, was very, very low. And so people were able to not need a huge game to make money. You could actually make a small game that had a really unique hook and like just like a fun mechanic, put it on Google Play and App Store and just pump it with ads to make people download it. And you'd make a small profit margin. If you scale that up and get 100 million downloads, you make several $1 million. So this was happening with tons of games. Unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore. It's totally done. Apple rolled out this IDFA platform change where you can't target ads as well. So tons of studios that were making really cool games just like got deleted overnight. And it was like kind of like this mass extinction event, which is really sad, I think, because there's a lot of innovation coming out of there, actually, like a lot of unique new mechanics and twists. Because it was kind of like, all right, let's just find a game hook and like just try a bunch of stuff and experiment. And yeah, so that's kind of how that whole like thing worked. But yeah, so I joined mobile. I was making my own prototypes, working externally with like publishers. But then I took a job at Homa because working with publishers was a mess. Like they would pay sometimes, they wouldn't pay sometimes, they'd give a cut. They were always trying to screw you over. And I'm like, all right, I'll just take a job. I need money. And Homa offered like a pretty good bonus program. And I was like, okay, I can still like do my entrepreneurial thing. If I get a game, basically they had this thing where it's like, if you make a game and it gets millions and millions of views, you will get a percentage or like a bonus, like based on views. And I was like, or downloads, not views. Downloads. If you get a lot of downloads, you get like a bonus percentage. Um, so I was like, okay, this sounds pretty good. It's a good compromise. I get paid a wage and I can also get like a nice bonus if I pop something
Yeah.
off. And I was really ambitious at the time. And I'm like, I'm definitely going to get something to go viral. And I did. Like pretty quickly after I joined, I was just like, doing a bunch of prototypes and I had this idea for, actually at first it was just like I had two ideas. It was like it was a runner game where you evolve, which actually was like not a thing yet. Like this concept of like you run, collect something, and then your character changes. Surprisingly, that was innovative at the time. There was only like one other game. It was called Run of Life published by Voodoo. And yeah, that was it. There was no other game where you actually like changed as you like collect things while running. And then I was like, okay, this seems like an emerging trend. So I'm gonna just try to make my own version of it. How about like a game kind of like Pokemon where you evolve a Pokemon while you run? So you collect. We had like radioactive bits, and you collect them as you're running, and you evolve into different versions of the monster. And that worked. It went super viral. People loved it. Had a super low CPI and a really high engagement rate. Even though we had 3 levels that were 30 seconds long, and they were just running, collecting, and evolving. And that was the whole thing. We tested that very, very small prototype, and it had like amazing metrics, and they very quickly scaled it up. And they made millions of dollars, and I saw nothing from my bonus or anything, and I quit. So it was kind of a messy, sad story again, where I had something go viral, but I made no money on it. So yeah, so that was a interesting phase of my life where I was like really sad because I had hit it big and the game was super successful and they made, headlines about it and everything. And I just got nothing. So be
That's
careful who you
incredibly
sign
sad.
deals with. Yeah.
Yeah, so they just didn't honor the agreement for your bonus, basically.
Yeah, I made a mistake where on the contract itself, it said I was entitled to the bonus program, which they told me, and they showed me the version of it. But basically, after we had that success, they changed the bonus program to being like nothing. And it was just like, we didn't say exactly what the bonus was, like we didn't put that in the contract. So
I
if you don't have it
see.
in writing, like there's basically nothing I could do. I mean, I
Yeah.
whatever, I took it as a lesson learned. They win. It was pretty good for them. I'm happy they had a lot of success, I guess.
Well, I hope some good karma comes back your way after that. That's really unfortunate for you. What are your thoughts on kind of the mobile landscape today? Like you mentioned, there was sort of this apocalypse. Is it just a totally different game where you can only play in the space if you have a bunch of money, or what's your take on it right now?
Yeah, exactly. I think that the only people that are doing really well with mobile now are these huge conglomerates making casual games. And I do think there's an angle about being an indie that like has something successful on Steam. Like I've been playing Clover Pit on mobile. Like it's amazing. I love that game. So I think that you could sell some premium versions of like a Steam game that goes viral and does really, really well. But I don't know what the profit margins are there for I think it's still like nothing compared to what you're going to make on Steam. So I think if you look at mobile, it's going to be 99% like these huge, Monopoly Go, or like, these huge publishing houses that have billions of dollars already. And it's kind of unfortunate because there was a time where it was like every day there was a different game on the top charts. Like there was top charts, number one would shift out every day. There'd be different
Hmm.
games. So it was like this very like renaissance period of like innovation. And a lot of people, that were doing that stuff did switch to Steam. Like, uh, there's Yusuf from Supermarket Simulator. He actually worked at Homa at my company. Uh,
No way. That's
he,
cool.
yeah, he actually uh, he told me that he was inspired by me joining because I gave like a talk about how great Homa was at some time, and so he actually joined afterwards because of something that we talked about, or that I said on some podcast or something back in the old days. But he left and did way better than I'm like, okay, well, good job, man. I'm sorry that I convinced you to take the job in the first place, but I'm so happy that you did so successfully, and
Yeah.
he's amazing. So I'm jealous. I mean, I'm happy for him, but I'm jealous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, it's things are changing. It makes so much sense now why also probably part like I have such a fond memory of mobile gaming as a kid. Like I got like an iPod Touch and would play it on the bus and like yeah, mobile games felt very different and probably some of that was just me being younger. But also yeah, there is probably definitely a changing landscape as well. Um
Yeah.
one kind of last segment I would love to talk to you about because I just thought it was interesting in the email you sent me is that you've also talked about having a little bit of success on LinkedIn. I know this is a pretty big shift
Hmm.
here, but I thought it would be an interesting spot to stop in on. So what does some of that traction you said you're gaining on LinkedIn look like?
Yeah, I've got like a small following because I don't like I want to do YouTube. Like it would be so nice to talk about my thoughts. I love talking about my thoughts. I've been in this industry for a long time, and I'm like really obsessed with game development and game production and the marketing side of everything. But I don't like to make YouTube videos because they take a long time and it's very laborious. And I have no real good reason for it either. I'm not like trying to market myself as like trying to sell courses or anything like that. I
Sure.
have no good incentive, but I want to share thoughts. And years ago, when LinkedIn was like, it made sense for when I was networking and actually having a job, it just became a really good place to like post some stupid thought about the industry at the time. At the time it was mobile when I was first doing it on LinkedIn, but now I've totally shifted to Steam and talking about Steam and making games on there. And I think people actually like LinkedIn for when you're actually just being a genuine person and talking and not being some like corporate mouthpiece and saying some,
Yeah.
there's so much like, I don't want to say like, circle jerking, but it's a lot of, it's a lot of
I
like
know
people trying
exactly
to
the
suck
culture
up.
you're talking about. Hmm.
And so it's actually refreshing and you can actually build a decent following if you're not like that, surprisingly. Like that stuff doesn't work at all. Like corporate glazing and just talking about like, just, trying to present yourself like this professional person, but just like present yourself as a passionate person and just say your thoughts and engage, just like Twitter or whatever, other kind of conversational social media. I think LinkedIn's really good because it's really straightforward. It's really fast. You can just write a blurb about how you feel about things. Like I'll write like, I feel like, for example, GDDs are overrated, and I think people should really just make iterative changes. And I talk about my feelings about design, development, marketing, and it's just fast. You can just type something. You don't have to host your own blog. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for short form YouTube videos. I don't have time for. I'm just making games, and so to me, I think it's a really interesting new space. It's not new, but at least for indie game developers to like just network and talk about how they feel about the industry and yap.
So you're
It's
viewing it
public.
more as you're viewing it more as like a kind of just connection piece to build up your network, so to speak, or is there an element of like maybe you're also trying to build a little bit of a following as well? Like, kind of what's the upside, or is it just a creative outlet that you enjoy as well?
I would say it's 90% a creative outlet. I've never really thought about building in. I just naturally over time built a following because I like to yap. I like to post my thoughts, but I don't really have, like I said, have a lot of time to do other things. So it's just a quick place to post things. And over time it resonates with a lot of people. And I think that creates over time a following. I think that applies to like any kind of social media, right? Say your feelings enough and it connects. So yeah, I think it's a good place if you don't have a lot of time and energy to do other stuff. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Jason, this has been a delightful chat. Let me leave you with one final question. So this is the Dev Dream podcast, and I created it to inspire mostly myself, but also other people by just hearing about what other cool developers have going on. And I'm always inspired by hearing about what other people are striving for. So for you, Jason, what would you say is your game dev dream in this season of life?
Make a game that gets very positive or overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam that has over like 1,000 reviews. I think would be freaking awesome. Just doing really good on Steam and actually like establishing myself as a Steam studio. That would be that's the dream.
Well, Jason, that's a fantastic dream. I hope you're able to make it a reality. Thanks for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.